Attention, armchair quarterbacks and shower thought GMs. It's time for this week's episode of SportsBall with Mike Maharrey and Alan Mosley.
So, where are you in life when you sit down and think to yourself, I should learn Sweet Home Alabama on guitar? Especially when you're a saxophone player at that.
That's probably getting real close to midlife crisis territory.
Guys, welcome back to another episode of SportsBall. I am your host, Alan Mosley, joined as always by Tampa Bay sports superfan Mike Maharrey. Mike, how are you doing?
It's hard being a Tampa Bay sports superfan, man.
It's seems to be up and down with you guys. I mean, I'm not going to feel too bad for you because it's not like you're not primarily a hockey fan and your hockey team didn't just win the Stanley Cup. So I really don't have a lot of sympathy for you. I mean,
we do have the pretty silver cup.
Yeah, and I mean,
except nobody can do anything with it because of the Rona, so there's that.
And I'm a Boise State /UT /Dallas Cowboys fan, so I have no sympathy for you right now. With that said, I watched a game the other night between two geriatrics that were dueling for supremacy in the NFC. And
I know it was the old man bowl.
It was the old man bowl, and I tell you what, the one that I on this very program have criticized for, in my opinion, being shot and being done. Don't get me wrong, he didn't exactly throw a bunch of 60-yard bombs, but he got the job done. Whereas the guy on the other side of the line, which, by the way, is like 44 years old, but admittedly has not shown a lot of physical decline, boy, howdy, it did not go well for them. So what the hell happened there?
Yeah, that was my take too. The 41-year-old looked like a young 41-year-old in control of the game, and the 43-year-old looked like, if you took that game in isolation, you would say that Brady was done and that Breeze, maybe has a little gas left in the tank. And I mean, there was a lot of things. That was one of those games that just snowballed from the very beginning. So, I'm not giving up on Tom Brady at this point, or nor am I going to say that, that Drew Brees is fixed. But yeah, I think you can say both of those guys are old.
Yeah. I mean,
and I don't have an explanation for it. I mean, there's, you can make the excuse that Ali Marpet was out on the Bucs offensive line. He is their best offensive lineman, and Wirtz, who's the rookie, he was struggling over there without Marpet being next to him. So, there's that. Brady was pressured a lot. He was on his butt a lot. But that's not why New Orleans scored 38 points in the first half. So, there's the problems on the other side of the ball as well. I mean, this was the vaunted and it was weird. I think a lot of this, honestly, was coaching. I mean, the Bucs completely changed their defensive philosophy in that game. Instead of doing the typical Todd Bowles blitz, put the pressure on, make Breeze earn it. They were basically rushing forward the whole game and dropping back into zone coverages. And a quarterback like Drew Brees with the experience, he's going to pick that apart, which is exactly what he did. So I don't know. It was not a good day to be a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan.
Well, I
say that.
I guess what kills me is, because, I mean, you know me, I just have a hate affair with the mainstream sports media. And all the sports media has been saying a couple of things. First, that, of course, I mean, this is Tampa Bay's just the team to beat. I mean, Tampa Bay went from afterthought to NFC Super Bowl favorite overnight because of their offseason moves, primarily Tom Brady, and then a handful of players that were desperate to want to come play with Tom Brady. And, of course, they have Bruce Arians, and people are just licking their chops. Oh, imagine Tom Brady and a Bruce Arians offense. Well, but Bruce Arians isn't Bill Belichick. I guess I'm just more upset at just the foaming at the mouth of all these talking heads that talk as if Bruce Arians has done anything in his career other than be average to above average. I mean, let's really call a spade a spade. And then for Tom Brady, I'm not saying that Tom Brady is physically done in the NFL. But to just assume that you will get those type of results out of a 44-year-old quarterback it's just naive. I mean, there's just no reason to believe that would be the case. And then on the other side of this coin, you have New Orleans Saints. Everybody was going into this week saying, well, the New Orleans Saints team that beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 1, the Buccaneers are a totally different team than they were in week 1. They've gelled a lot more. Gronk is online now. That the offense is coming together, and they're gonna split the series with the Saints, and that's going to position the Bucs to go on to even perhaps be a number 1 seed in the NFC. But it isn't just that they lost. They were categorically worse in absolutely every single facet of the game as compared to their week 1 matchup. I mean, but again, though, why would you be so surprised that a Bruce Arians coached team with a 44-year-old quarterback somehow can't quite seem to put it all together? And then again, as I said, I will fully admit I have said I thought Drew Brees was done. But if that were true, if Drew Brees can't push the ball down the field, and you're Tampa Bay's defense, and you know that all you have to do is leave a spy in for Alvin Kamara and take out the underneath throws, and you're just guaranteed a victory. And then you give up 38 points. It seems like there's a whole lot wrong in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I tell you who else tore the Bucs up was Taysom Hill.
Oh, hold on, I just want to take a really quick break. Dave Wilimowski says, I can't hear this because I'm still at work, but how about them Bills? Wave to me. Hey, Dave. There you go. And Andrew Avery says, howdy, friends and neighbor. Andrew, we're going to get to your pets in a minute. You just hang on. So about Taysom Hill. So speaking of that, and this was actually some analysis even the goons in the press booth said during the game. Taysom Hill almost never throws. Every single time you see him line up under center and Drew Brees springs out wide, you know they're not going to throw it to Drew Brees. And you know Taysom Hill is going to roll out and then just take off and run. You know this. And then they do it. And it still worked.
Right.
So what does that say about Tampa Bay's defense?
I'll say this, though. The first 2 times he had the ball, he did throw the ball. He had 40-yard passing, two pass completions for 40 yards. And the very first one, I think it was a 3rd down play. And he threw a nice little pass to the tight end, which I think went for 20, 25 yards. So then all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, crap, this guy can throw the ball too. Yeah, there's a lot of problems in Tampa Bay. And let me ask you this, look at the pieces on the offense that they have added, the kind of superstar pedigree. You've got Mike Evans to start with, Pro Bowl receiver. You've got Godwin, who has a broken finger but played.
Yeah.
Then you've got a couple other good receivers, and then you add Antonio Brown to the mix, and then you've got Leonard Fournette. I mean, at some point, maybe you've added a few too many ingredients to the cake mix.
Yeah.
And I wonder, a little bit if having Antonio Brown coming in for that game didn't discombobulate the offense a little bit, where it's like, we've got this new toy, we've got to figure out how to use it. And, I don't know, maybe it's hard to say.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that it's his fault, but I mean, it's just like, you've got so many people to get the ball to. They didn't even target Evans in the first half of that game. And, he's supposed to be their superstar receiver. And the whole idea was, you get Antonio Brown in there, and then that's going to take the double coverage off of Evans, and he'll be open. And I don't know, it's just it wasn't working. I'm not ready to seal the deal on the Bucs, but I think there's some problems, and I think it was exposed a little bit. I think that Brady is still learning this new offense. I don't think the down the hill, press the ball philosophy of Arians really is plays to Brady's strengths, and I think we're seeing that a little bit. And I don't know. We'll see if they can put it together, because they've got the talent on both sides of the ball to be a playoff team. I'm not calling them a Super Bowl team like some of the people were, but that was a mess. And let's be honest. The game before that against the Giants, they skated out of New York by the skin of their teeth as well. So
A very bad New York Giants team.
yes,
I will leave you with this before we move on to the next segment. Jameis Winston was on. He's a meme of him.
He was eating W's.
He's a meme of himself. He knows that people criticized him for the eating W's thing. So what did he do? He did it again. But I'll ask you the same question I asked you. It's more of a rhetorical thing than the same question I asked you after week 1 of this very season. How vindicated does Jameis feel right now? You know, Jameis Winston never lost to the Saints 38-3.
No. But I will say this as well, the whole eating W's thing. That would play a lot better if he had anything to do with either one of those 2 wins.
Oh, I mean, oh yeah.
It's like, dude, you're the 3rd string quarterback effectively, and on a 1-year contract for $1 million. So, nobody wanted you. So maybe you should hold on to the W's until you actually do something. But I think in his own mind, I'm certain that he does feel vindicated. And, it'll be interesting to see what happens with him next year. Are they going to go with Taysom Hill? Is he the future of the franchise?
Yeah.
Will Jameis try to go somewhere else? Or, Jameis is getting old. You've got these new quarterbacks coming in. He could be nearing the end of his career.
All I'll say is this. I think if Jameis had started last night, the Saints would have still won.
I almost feel like if I started last night, the Saints would.
Well, I mean, you said he had a 1-year contract for $1 million to do nothing. Pff, I can do that.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So moving on.
Put me in, coach.
Couldn't happen to a better group of guys. ESPN announces 300 layoffs. That's about 10% of their workforce, by the way, citing disruption amid coronavirus. Now we've avoided a lot of political talk on the show, and admittedly, you and I were going to do an episode last week, which would have fallen on the day of the election, and we were going to discuss a little political news as to say, well, this will be our one day of the year that we'll sidetrack, and we ended up not doing it, and we may visit that a little bit here now. But let me just ask you this, just in a bubble. You hear that. ESPN, layoffs, over 10% of their staff. And it's amid disruptions due to coronavirus. Do you buy that?
No. In fact, I think the problem that ESPN has is the exact opposite of what we've had. We've tried to avoid the political talk.
Mm-hmm.
ESPN has decided that we're going to be a political network. And I don't think your average sports fan wants to hear all that crap.
Yeah. Well, I think no matter what your opinion is. Now, I could certainly argue that a noticeable amount of their previously established audience was maybe center right, to put it mildly, or just in general apolitical and just wants to watch sports. But I don't think it's just a matter of where their opinions lie. Although I think one could argue most of the crap that they put out is certainly left wing in undertone. Would you say that's fair to say?
Oh yeah.
But I don't think that that's necessarily the issue. It is an issue, but I don't think it's the issue. I think the issue is that no matter what your political affiliation is, if people want to go watch politics, C-SPAN's still on. CNN exists.
Or you can go to Fox News,
Fox is
MSNBC,
24/7.
Yeah.
So if I'm turning the channel to ESPN, it's because I'm looking for sports, right? That seems like a big fat fail on ESPN's part. You are a sports network. It literally has sports in your name. And right. So when you ditch that, you are actively promoting content that goes counter to, when you're flipping channels on TV Guide and you see that that's a sports network, if you're not into sports, you won't click on it, and it's a moot point. If you are into sports and you click on it and you can't find sports there, you don't go back. I mean, this seems like it's not rocket science to me, but what do I know?
Yeah. Well, I've said this before, as somebody who follows politics, who's interested in politics, I don't want to hear it when I turn on the football game. I want to watch a damn football game, or whatever it is. And it's like everything is politicized. They politicize soccer, for God's sake. I mean, nobody wants to watch soccer to begin with. Certainly want to watch politicized soccer. Apologies to all our soccer fans that are listening.
Well, politicized soccer notwithstanding, you're right. It's not. So there's both the programming and there's the commercial advertisements. course, you know, some people may be old enough to remember that the whole point of watching a network on cable is that you didn't have a bunch of commercials. That's why you paid for cable.
You remember that.
Of course, I mean, that's just ancient history now, right? At this point, now all basic cable is just the exact same thing as network television. But with that said, you know, it's ESPN. I'm sure they would like to have a larger market share of the female audience, but it stands to reason more women than men are watching Days of Our Lives right now. And more men than women are watching SportsCenter. That just dims the brakes. So if you saw, you know, Gillette, well, before Gillette went woke, but, you know, razors, sporting goods stores, you know, Dick's Sporting Goods, beer, you know, yeah, you would expect that on ESPN. But that's what good advertising is that this is what your expected market is, and that's who you want to advertise to. There you go. But now, you and I had discussed just the other night that Indeed commercial. Indeed, of course, being the employment website, the job search website, about the young black lady who apparently has a name that she is of foreign ancestry. She has a perfect like English accent, by the way, so she must be foreign ancestry generations past. And basically, the vocal point of the commercial is that America is just too racist and discriminatory for a talented young woman like me to get a job. So thank God Indeed found me a job as a contact tracer. Now, I'm not even going to get into the Rona talk today, by the way. I'm just simply pointing out that was the job she got on the commercial, was contact tracer. But does the audience who's watching the Sunday night football game was Saints Bucks, right? That was Sunday night.
Yes.
Does the majority audience in Tampa Bay or New Orleans markets who are trying to tune in to their football team, is that what they want to hear right now? Is that the best use of your advertising dollars? Is that the best use of your airspace for the network?
Yeah, I don't know about the New Orleans market. I know the Tampa market intimately. The Tampa Bay football market it reminds me a little bit of the Pittsburgh Steelers market. It's that blue collar, you know, you pop your beer and you watch the Bucks.
Yeah.
That's the mentality. That's the average Bucks fan. It's kind of a blue collar, a lot of retirees, you know, people that worked in the steel mills that got the hell out and moved to Florida because it's warm. That's your target. They don't want to hear that.
Yeah,
crap.
They don't want to be lectured to. The entire last couple of election cycles, if I may stray for just a moment before we move on to the next segment, has been a battle between those who want to have a much more hands-on approach to both politics and society, and those who don't want to be lectured to. And no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, I promise you, the right place for your infomercial is not ESPN.
Right.
But they just keep doing it, don't they?
That's why they're 300 employees short.
Yes. Speaking of being a little short, it's time for the LP Team of the Week. The New York Jets, with 6 minutes and 5 seconds left in the fourth quarter, had a 27-17 lead, Mike Maharrey. By the way, you could, I mean, a lot of Jets fans are happy that this didn't work out, because that's just going to potentially ruin their chance of getting the number one pick. I mean, let's face it,
right.
They're now 0-9. The season's over. You have literally nothing to play for but a pick. So they would probably have preferred they lost. But in the ethical argument for fair play and competition, they hold the Patriots to a field goal. But by the way, they had held the Patriots to a field goal, but then mysteriously sent a 12th man onto the field to be called for a penalty, which gave Patriots a first down. Now, the Jets' defense held and forced them to a field goal again. Immediately after this, the Jets get the ball, and on first down, with less than 6 minutes to play, knowing that a few first downs could end the game, certainly another score would almost certainly end the game, and having had tons of success both with running the ball and checking down, on first down, Joe Flacco, with absolutely no pressure in the pocket, just casually launches the ball straight down the right hash marks into double safety coverage and an interception.
Mm-mm.
At which time, New England is able to run the ball down the field, score the touchdown to tie the game. But don't worry, with less than 2 minutes to play, the Jets then absolutely get no first downs. They actually take an enormous sack to back themselves up on their end of the field and then punt the ball so that the Patriots can go down with 0 seconds left and kick the game-winning field goal.
Oh.
Mike Maharrey, I submit to you that the Jets purposely lost that game.
Yikes.
And I don't know if you have your tinfoil hat affixed enough to believe me when I say, and I mean it, that they purposely lost that game. But let's just say for a moment that I'm right and they did. Do you think it is ethical or a fair play competition for a team to purposely lose a game?
It depends on how you look at it. I mean, from the standpoint of the franchise,
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense, right? I mean, that's the way to make your franchise better.
Mm-hmm.
So you can look at it from that perspective. I think if you look at it from the perspective of your fans, people that are, well, I was about to say spending money to come to your games, but nobody's doing that right now because of the Rona. But it's certainly not ethical to people that have spent their hard-earned money to buy season tickets, to purchase your gear,
Sure.
To be fans. And how ethical is it to your players?
Yes.
I mean, I would assume that if this is a decision that's being made at the management and coaching level, what about your guys that have incentives in their contracts or
Yes.
for them, no, absolutely not. And I think your average football player, they don't care about next year.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even know that they're going to play next week. It's a game where your career could end tomorrow.
Yep.
And I know just from my own competitive, I don't want to lose a game, So, I think from a broader standpoint, no, I don't think it's very ethical. But I can see why from a management standpoint you would do it.
You brought up a great point right there that they can't just forfeit, right? If they just forfeit, they're going to be fined and penalized and all that. They can't just not take the field. But so instead, in an almost more perverse sense, they instead put the health and careers of their players on the line to purposely lose, as opposed to just forfeit and let those guys take the day off. Which leads me to my next point. Now, you brought up the point right off the bat there that while you consider it to be unfavorable, you understand it from a franchise perspective. Jets are in line to get the number one pick. Number one pick goes to the team with the worst record. They're in line to get it. Why would we want to win? So then I would argue then that if the system as it exists is incentivizing such activity that we just argued is both unethical and immoral if you're considering the health and livelihood of your players, then how about we just get rid of that system? How about we get rid of the NFL draft?
You can't do that.
Gasp! How dare you change an institution I've come to admire?
Clutch the pearls.
In true conservative fashion, the draft has been around long enough now that I want to conserve it.
Right.
I'm sorry. I'm taking punches at people in veiled attempts. But here's the thing, though. You have a salary cap, right? Mm-hmm. No team can spend more than another team. I mean, if they do, they're mortgaging their future years, right? And there's a roster cap. You can only have, 53 on your active roster on game day. So the Yankees can't buy the Jets and then spend, $400 million making sure that Patrick Mahomes is starting and Russell Wilson is your backup, and you can't do it. Then what do we need a draft for?
Yeah. Well, let's look at it from the college player perspective.
Okay.
Let's look at it from Trevor Lawrence's perspective. And I think we talked about this maybe a couple of episodes back. He didn't want to play for the Jets.
No.
So why should there be a system in place that forces your best college players to play for crappy teams if they don't want to play for those crappy teams and arguably jeopardize their career? Look at somebody like Tim Couch. I think Tim Couch would have been a successful NFL quarterback had he not been the quarterback of the Browns.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny that you mentioned Tim Couch. I consider Tim Couch to be roughly on par in terms of physical gifts and competency as Joe Flacco. Now, Joe Flacco I don't consider to be very good, but you know what Joe Flacco has? He has a Super Bowl ring, doesn't he?
He does.
Because he was on the right team and he made the right plays at the right time. And now he has a Super Bowl ring. And there's no analysis we can possibly give about how bad Flacco is. It's going to change the fact that is Super Bowl winning quarterback Joe Flacco to you, young man. Tim Couch could have done that if he was playing. Tim Couch gets brought in by someone during that era, like, you know, the Packers or the 49ers or even, you know, even the Patriots or someone like that. That's Super Bowl winning quarterback Tim Couch to you. So I agree with that. I would even go a step forward and say, you just compare that to other industry. Can you think of any industry where when you enter the job market or you enter an industry, you have practically no say in where you're going to go work? There's 30 corporations or 32 corporations that hire every new worker in that industry. And you're going to be picked by one, and you have to go work for that one for 6 years at a fixed rate. And there's no negotiation basically on your part for that. After that 6 years, after that indentured servitude, if I could be so signaling, dog whistling as to say such, then you have a little bit more options, assuming you've had a successful career to that point. Would that fly in any other part of society other than professional sports?
I'm going to go with no.
I think you should get rid of the NFL draft. Those are the kind of hot takes you get on this program that you're not going to get on ESPN.
So here's a quick, just aside, speaking of Tim Couch. Okay. You know how many times he was sacked his first season?
Oh, Lord. How many?
56. I mean, that's sacks. That doesn't count how many times he was knocked down. Yeah. You know, it's no wonder he only lasted a few seasons in the NFL. They broke him in the first year.
Yeah, so that's 3.5 sacks and untold how many hurries and knockdowns per game. When in general, if you give up 3.5 sacks in a game, you've had I wouldn't say cover your eyes awful, but a below average day on your offensive line. But you do that for 16 games in a row. Yeah, that's big time. Yikes.
Yeah. It's a big yikes. So I bet Tim Couch would be for getting rid of the NFL draft too.
Well, the older Carr brother. I mean, he's like the standard bearer for a physically talented athlete coming out of college and just being murdered, just being absolutely murdered. Speaking of being absolutely murdered, time to get our solemn faces on. We're going to remember a player, a team, a coach, whoever whose sporting life was cut tragically short in memoriam. Mike, who are you remembering this week?
Well, I'm going to reach back a couple of weeks. I was going to do this last week, but we weren't here. But I have to do an in memoriam for my beloved Tampa Bay Rays, who managed to make it to the sixth game of the World Series, but could go no further, and also wanted to see the sad Ray again.
That is the best graphic we've ever had.
It is the best graphic. But the Rays had a good season. Questionable managing. Blake Snell was having a fantastic game in Game 6, mowing down LA Dodgers. And then the metrics, the Moneyball said he needs to come out, and they took him out, and they put in Anderson, and Anderson gave up like 3 runs. So anyway, it is what it is.
Yeah. How dare they only be the second best team in professional baseball? Being a Tampa Bay fan is so hard, you guys.
It is. It is. We can't have nice things in Tampa Bay.
Well, I've gone on record before saying until the creamsicles come back, I say no to Tampa Bay sports. You know who I'm remembering this week? It's Coach Jeremy Pruitt of the Tennessee Volunteers. Tennessee sports media is now starting to churn out articles such as this one. The end is near for Jeremy Pruitt. That's bad news, especially he's just started his year 3 at the program. How's this for Jeremy Pruitt? Tennessee fell to 2-4 on Saturday after 23-13 loss to the Arkansas Razorbacks. And this is particularly bad for a few reasons. One, They led that game 13-0 at halftime and then gave up 24 unanswered points. That's a big yikes. Two, at this point in his career, his numbers now match up quite eerily similar, if not slightly disfavorably, to both Butch Jones and Derek Dooley. So Tennessee, the point being is that they're not trending in the right direction in year 3 in the program. And of course, the last thing being, you remember, they started the season 2-0, and then they went on a 4-game losing streak. And in those 4 games, they have been largely non-competitive. Now, look, not everybody in the world had to play, Georgia and Alabama like in back-to-back weeks in the last few weeks. So, you know what? Being an SEC team is hard. However, since the first half of Georgia, they have been a non-competitive football team. I don't know how they beat Missouri, by the way. They somehow did. It's one of those things where the team that we've now seen the last couple of weeks, you feel like if they had to start the season over, they'd be 0-6 instead of 2.
Yeah.
So when you're a new coach, but to be fair, by the time you're getting around to year 3, you're less the new coach and more the coach we want to start to see improvement from. No one is expecting Jeremy Pruitt to have led them to victory over Alabama and Georgia this year. But you can't get blown out. So here's the final stat for Jeremy Pruitt and why the end is nigh. Did you know that up through this point in his career, now not comparatively to year 3 of those other coaches, this is year 3 of Pruitt versus the entire tenures of those other coaches. He has now more than double the blowout losses, that being 20 points or more. He has now double the blowout losses that Butch Jones had in like 5 years, and that he has in barely 3. That's a non-competitive football team, made especially bad when you look at the recruiting. No one's saying Jeremy Pruitt sucks because he can't recruit. In terms of recruiting star rankings, the star numbers on that roster are top 15 in the country, and they're 2-4. You can't be a top 15 team in terms of star power in the country and be 2-4. That's not allowed. And so I think that Jeremy Pruitt's time is almost up. You have nothing to add, but I know you're shedding a tear over there for the Volunteers. You go to hell, Maharrey. I'm not even going to. But you're just jealous because I have such an awesome background. That's.
I do confess that the checkerboard stadium thing's cool.
Yeah. We do that now when we know we're about to lose by 40. It's time for the pick'em so we can get out of here. We're going to start in college football. Number 13, Wisconsin. They're 1-0, by the way. So, I mean, they're technically undefeated and ranked 13th, but that's a little bit deceptive because they're a Big Ten team. Going against
they had Rona.
The Michigan Wolverines, who are at 1-2. Mike Maharrey, both who do you have, and is Jim Harbaugh about to get the Pruitt treatment?
Ooh, tell you what, things aren't looking good for Harbaugh. I mentioned this before we started the show. Harbaugh is in the next to last year of his contract, and generally speaking, you don't let a big time coach get that deep into a contract without renewing, particularly in college where. Ohio State coach can say, hey, I don't know about it. Harbaugh's still going to still be there in a couple of years. So, yeah, I think he is on the hot seat. Wisconsin, it's hard to – Wisconsin looked like world beaters in their first game, and then they had the Rona, so they haven't played.
Yes.
So, but I'm going to go with Wisconsin. I haven't seen much out of Michigan that makes me think that they're – I think they're in a free fall. So we'll go with the Badgers.
Michigan has lost 2 games in a row. The first one being a field goal loss to a Michigan State team. By the way, that Michigan State team then turned around and lost to Iowa by 40. That's not a good loss. And then they got manhandled by Indiana. I mean, to be fair, Indiana actually kind of looks sort of good all of a sudden, but I don't think anyone is mistaking Indiana for Ohio State. And they got manhandled by Indiana. Wisconsin's going to win that, and I think Harbaugh's done.
And it looks like Wisconsin has a quarterback. That kid looked legit in game 1. So
going to the NFL, it's your Tampa Bay Buccaneers playing the 3-6 Carolina Panthers. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that, I think the Buccaneers are going to rebound and win this game. But let me pose you this. Is this a must-win game for Tampa Bay's playoff hopes?
Well, I agree with you. I think the Bucs are going to right the pirate ship. Although, Carolina's a team that's trending upward. You got to be impressed with what they've done coming into a season with a new coach, and they've got McCaffrey back.
Mhm.
So I think it can be competitive. They took Kansas City down to the wire, but I think
Yeah.
I think this is. I don't think it's a must win. I don't think if they lose this game that you're going to say, well, they can't make the playoffs. I think if they lose this game, it's going to be a signal that they're going to have a hard time losing the playoffs
Mhm.
because it's going to be a sign of deep trouble
Yeah.
in the franchise and with the team.
I
So I hesitate to call it a must win, but I think they should win. They need to win.
I don't think it is literally a must win, but if they can't win this game, they shouldn't make the playoffs. We'll put it that way. And finally, you got the Seattle Seahawks going to LA to play the Rams. Mike Maharrey, both of these teams have lost 2 of their last 3 games. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's Seattle's defense is awful.
Yes.
So if LA wants an opportunity to get its offense back on track, this would be it. The question always comes down to me with the Seattle game is, can Russell Wilson put the team on his back and drag it to victory?
Yeah.
I would say, playing in LA, that really doesn't make any difference in an empty stadium. I'm going to go with my gut on this and say the Seahawks win this game.
I'm going to go with the Seahawks as well because I just think the Rams are worse than their 5-3 record indicates. They've had some ugly losses, and then they've had some uninspired wins against poor teams. With that said, yes, Seattle's defense is terrible. The days of the Legion of Boom are way in the rear view at this point, despite the fact that Russell Wilson is such a great quarterback. So I think it's a lot closer game than one might believe. I will say this, though. If Seattle loses this game, the New Orleans Saints are firmly affixed in the driver's seat for the number 1 seed. The Breeze window will have not quite yet closed.
Nope.
We have a pillow fight.
Ooh, fun.
Speaking of conferences who wish the football season had never started, the Big Ten will be featuring the 0-3 Penn State Nittany Lions going on the road to play the 0-2 Nebraska Cornhuskers. Mike, yikes. That's my analysis. I mean, James Franklin, you want to talk about coaches on the hot seat. I think Frost gets a pass at Nebraska because he's still so early in his tenure, although they have to be raising their eyebrows that they feel like progress isn't being made, just like in Pruitt's situation. But my goodness, James Franklin at Penn State. I've never believed that Penn State deserved some of the rankings they've gotten the last few years, but they have proven that they didn't deserve the rankings they've gotten the last few years. And there are, I mean, let's face it, at 0-3, their season's already over. Is James
Franklin's got to be? He's got to be one of the worst game day coaches. I mean, he has a reputation as being a great recruiter, but just clock management, play calling. You spend half of the time you're watching a Penn State game going, "What the hell?" I don't know. I don't know about this game. I'm going to go with the emotional pick. I'd like to see the Huskers win this game. I remember when I was a kid, the Huskers they were a powerhouse, man.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that come back. So I'm going to go with the Huskers. I don't know. I don't have any rational reason for that. It's a pillow fight.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes a pillow fight is that there's.
And James Franklin will probably figure out some way to botch up some, he'll call a timeout at a weird time or not call a timeout when he needs to.
I mean, on paper,
we'll go with the Huskers.
On paper, Penn State should win. But there's a reason why they're 0-3. So what? I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to say Nebraska. Do you have a final thought?
I do have a final thought. Tampa Bay Buccaneers games. Do you know how many times the Buccaneers ran the ball?
How many times did they run
against
the ball?
the New Orleans Saints? 3.
Holy crap.
That's got to be some kind of record for not running the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand it, and I think Arians was actually asked about this in the post game, and why did you abandon them? Well, we're down 21 points. You got to run the ball once, right?
Yeah.
Come on. And actually, technically, it was 4. If you want to, they did have a kneel down at the end of the game, which is considered a run, but that's pretty yikes.
I'm just gonna stick with my statement from earlier in the show. That just reeks of Bruce Arians to me, and I don't know why the sports media is just now catching up with that being the expectation. I don't know why.
I
mean, I don't know. I guess I just think everyone sucks.
The world according to Alan.
Speaking of that, my final thought is that it was a really rough week to be a sports fan for me this week. All I can say is that yes, I think the Pruitt era will be coming to a close very soon, because I know that there's the traditional logic is that a coach needs 4, 5, even 6 years to turn a program around. And let me tell you the anecdotes of the coaches who were given several years and now their program is better. A lot of people like to point out Dabo Sweetening at Clemson. Although I can tell you right now, Clemson didn't have the expectations back then that UT has always had. That's ridiculous on its face. A lot of people talk about Stoops in Kentucky. But again, to be fair, what has Kentucky really won? Let's be honest. Yeah, they're better than they have been in the past.
They're awful this year.
But what have they really won? So I don't consider that a good anecdote either. The fact of the matter is that what was the quote we used from a couple of weeks ago? That anything that should be done eventually should be done immediately. Pruitt's got to go, and oh, by the way, ditto for McCarthy for the Dallas Cowboys. If it is obvious that this team has quit, that there's practically no coaching being done, and outside of some weird performance against the Steelers this week, they're showing absolutely no fight at all. Why wait? Everything sucks. I'm bringing Sad Ray back. Guys, thank you so much, and we will see you next week. Love me.
You have been listening to SportsBall with Mike Maharrey and Alan Mosley. You can follow us on Facebook and leave comments, suggestions. Just go to @SportsBall Podcast. That's @SportsBall Podcast on Facebook. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.